Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignell. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I interview 29 amazing Black women over 29 days during Black History Month. And today I am super excited to have Chana Ewing, who is the founder and chief creator at Little Big World, join me again. So I've been doing this series for 5 years. So the likelihood I'm going to get someone again is fantastic because I get to hear what they've been up to over the last few years. So I can't wait for you to hear what other than the new things Shauna's up to. So take a listen. Shauna! Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. This is so exciting. I think this is the first time that I've been a returning guest on a podcast. So I'm
Because you're
excited to do
special,
that.
girl. So, I know what it means. I only do it for people who I genuinely want folks to hear about what they're up to next. And I wanted folks to hear what you were up to next. So, and also, like, the whole point about 29 Days of Magic is that, especially in today's weird and wacky world that we live in, is to give as many dope Black women their flowers for making it through these crazy times. So that's why you here, friend.
I hear that. I love this content series. I love that you keep doing it. You said this is your fifth year doing it.
Yes, ma'am.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I'm also
Like,
a crazy person.
congratulations to that.
Why, thank you. So even though you're a returning guest, I'm going to ask you the same first question again because I'm sure you might have a different answer. So, Shana, what was your first job?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that today. I was like, what job do I want to talk about? Because, there's been a lot of firsts, in my life, right? So when you get to be an elder millennial like myself, there have been a lot of first jobs. So I think I'll go with this is the one that just came to mind because of the when I came online a few minutes ago, I said, "How are you doing?" And you said, "Causing trouble as usual." And I was like, yes, that's actually I feel like what I've been doing most of my life. And so one of my first jobs, one of my first jobs was at AIDS Action Committee of Boston. This is in the 90s, and I guess I'm going to age myself. So late 90s, a teenager, and I took a job with AIDS Action Committee of Boston to teach sex education to my peers. And so I think that that was, like in retrospect, I think that was very subversive thing to do in that time period. And certainly, as we're looking at the pushback in today's world, this very conservative, this very fascist pushback that we have going on, I feel like a teen like Chana in the 90s would have been causing trouble. So that's my
That
first
is
job.
one, amazing. Two, it's really interesting how timely that is right at this moment to be to think about being a teenager right now and trying to find ways to cause trouble. And also, kind of similar, weirdly, that kind of to my first job. I also was a teenager in the 90s, and I worked at a kind of youth outreach center on Long Island. And we were there to kind of help teens, like similarly, like here's some condoms, take these. Here's some services so you don't get yourself in trouble. Or if you need services, here's how to help you. So
Right.
and I think about like no, there was no social media back then. There was barely any cell phones. And these centers, worked and they were helpful to young people and young adults who were trying to figure out their lives. So it is interesting as you think about where we are right now, 25 plus years later, about how those services are needed now more than ever.
Absolutely. And also, you can understand why the pushback on Gen Z, and I mean, the pushback is across generations, but I think in particular, it's a pushback against young people because they recognize that these early moments in your life where you do take on an issue and you do work around that issue, you in that outreach center, me working at AIDS Action Committee, like the when you do that as a young person, it's like formative, right? And it's radicalizing. So it sets you on a path to how you see the world. And it would make sense for people that do not have the same shared values as us, that they would be targeting anything that is setting young people on a path of change, on a path of standing up for what's right, on the path of full self expression.
Yeah, because like yeah, that experience left an imprint on you, and it's how you and it's colored how you view the world.
Exactly.
And I think of myself, it's like I was a very bougie kid working in that place, and I was working with kids who lived essentially 7 minutes away from me, but it might as well have been 700 miles because we couldn't have been more different. And it was my first experience of like, okay, well, they're black kids who look like me, but like don't have the same services, don't have the same opportunities. And it's also up to me because folks talk to me better or nicer because I sounded white. And so I would sort of be the voice for the kids because I was like, oh, wait, like here's what we're trying to do here. And because I sounded, more agreeable or conciliatory, folks would give me more respect. And it realized and made me realize very early on the power of the fact that like I can fit in some spaces that other folks who look like me don't. And it's also my responsibility when I'm in those spaces to advocate for people who look like me. And I think about how
Mm.
I hasn't that hasn't changed. Like I think about now again, 20 some odd years later, yep, shit hasn't changed. I do the same thing.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and I think for me, it was like I had the experience of talking like directly to my peers. So folks who I went to school with, like classmates or folks in other schools or community organizations, and then like standing in front of them and, doing something that I was like a bit, in my mind, I feel like in retrospect, it feels a bit hokey, but like showing people how to put on condoms,
Yeah.
that felt like, oh, like that was a it was a an opportunity for me to be brave in front of peers and also do something that was like a little bit uncomfortable for me. And I think that definitely has set me on a path around like both the content and the people that I care about, and also that sometimes it's going to take me being a bit stepping outside of my own comfort zone in order to like live in my values.
Damn right. So, in the time since we last chatted and where we are now, what good trouble have you been up to?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when we last chatted, I think we chatted in 2020. I'm pretty sure it was 2020, but it could have been later. And we talked about Genie, which was my startup baby at the time. And since then, so Genie was like a beauty marketplace really around shopping your values, right? And the way we did that was we curated a marketplace of brands that were by diverse founders of all different backgrounds. And then we also layer that with like good ingredients, their social impact statements. And so to make it possible for you to look at this like menu of choices like around your own values and find the beauty products that align to you. So that was sort of what we were doing, I think, when we initially talked. Since then, I've closed Genie. I think it had a nice run, but unfortunately, the business didn't it just didn't do what we set out to do. We started to recognize that essentially for the small brands that were on our marketplace, folks tended to just shop those brands directly versus like in our marketplace. And so that was one challenge for us as a marketplace, and then the second challenge was that some of the larger organizations like Sephora and Ulta and Amazon then started to create DEI platforms and bring in diverse brands, right? So, but lo and behold and lo, as just Jesse Wu says, one of my favorite content creators. Since then, it remains to be seen how some of these larger brands will continue with their retail DEI commitments. But so long story short, there were a couple of things that happened that didn't necessarily make sense for Genie. So today, I'm actually returning to an earlier business of mine, but from a new perspective. So, my other background is in digital marketing for social impact documentaries, so entertainment marketing. And so, I'm returning to that space but from a queer lens. So essentially what I mean by that is that we're focused on thinking beyond boundaries and thinking beyond binaries and approaching marketing and campaigns through the lens of what we would say is care. So, not only from a profit motivation or how do we sell things to people, but how do the folks that we're targeting feel good about the the campaigns that they are witnessing, both in how are they represented in those campaigns and also in the products that we're selling or the content or community engagement that we're putting in front of them.
Awesome. So how's that been, like that shift of, and how does it feel to kind of go back to, something that you originally was working on, and then but with a kind of fresh eyes, having lived through the startup experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say that like Genie was my first experience, I suppose, of building a business with a particularly like queer lens, right? I don't think that that's how we defined it at the time, but looking back, I think that that was exactly what we were doing. And so I think when we closed that up, I thought about like what I wanted to do next. I knew that I still wanted to operate from the perspective of care and it's, gender expansiveness and fresh thinking and new ways of being. And, I still wanted to kind of carry that forward in whatever I did next. And so it then became about like, okay, what do you do? What do you do now? And I've always loved films. I've always loved storytelling. I've always loved the opportunity to bring stories to life through different marketing channels. And so I said, okay, well, let's just combine these two and build this business from this point of view. And when I thought about that, that was like, I guess last year. And I feel like today in 2025, with our new president and his administration, I feel like my business, what wasn't necessarily at the time of me, like sort of coming up with the concept of what Little Big World would be, it wasn't like an FU at the time, but, you know, now in 2025, in February of 2025, I feel very satisfied with the fact that this business is completely against everything that this presidency stands for in this moment. And I hope that we can be a refuge or a support system for people that are doing interesting work and just helping them layer in some marketing strategies around the work that they're doing to reach the people that they want to reach.
Amen. Because it's so damn necessary right now. I was reading. I just saw something on, I think, Threads a little while ago, and it was Brittany Packnett Cunningham, a really amazing activist and writer, talking about how she just had a new baby boy, and she was saying how it's like, you know, it's not despite of this madness that we're in, but anyhow. It's like we're gonna make this work anyhow. Like it don't know how we have to do it, but we're gonna make this work. And we're not gonna silence our voices. We're gonna keep our voices loud, and we're gonna keep advocating for the communities that we care about loudly. We're not gonna let anybody stop us from speaking about that. And I think that really resonates in the work that you're doing, because obviously the LGBTQIA plus community has taken a horrific amount of hits recently because our current government is nuts. That's probably the most polite thing I can say. And all these attacks are just cruel and just come from this weird place of just, the hell is wrong with you? Leave people alone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, to be clear, it's like the queer community is one of these communities that run across all communities, right? Like it's so intersectional. There's no one identity group that does not have queer people in it, right? And so
I've
I
always
think
had queer
that,
people. There's always been
yeah,
trans people. There's always been queer
exactly.
people from the beginning of time.
Exactly. Exactly. Across communities, across generations, across race, across ethnicity. This is just true throughout time. And so to like yes, it's a smaller population, but it's a population that is a part of every population. And so from my perspective, we can't really afford to, what do they say, like comply in advance, right? Like we're here, we exist, and we'll continue to do the work of living our lives.
And I think that's the most important aspect of all of this and why I wanted you here. And it's interesting, like I think you now are gonna be the fourth queer person who's done 29 days this week. And all different parts of the industry, and from VC to real estate to creative storytelling. Because again, oftentimes people seem to think, oh, well, it's only one industry. Like, no, there's people
Exactly.
everywhere. What's wrong with you? People are people. I've never understood why folks don't understand. People. That's it.
It's like, what is it? Was it Quinta and her famous meme that's like, people be gay?
That's it.
You know, like
That's literally it. People
I
be
think that
gay.
that's her. I think that's her famous meme on social media that I just love. It's just so clear and perfect.
Like there's no reason to anything more than that. And so what?
Exactly.
Like, and is it gonna how is it going to affect you personally? No, it will not. Now, if you people be a Nazi, that would be a problem. But
Absolutely.
like,
Absolutely.
but I think and that's why I think it's so important that queer stories are being told in so many beautiful ways, and that's why the work you're doing is so very important. So as you've been building out this new, well, kind of old new business, what are some of the challenges you faced along the way, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and I guess I should just make a small edit that it's like, yeah, the business is queer centric, and I'm sort of saying that that's like our approach, but we do work with organizations that are not necessarily founded by queer folks, or organizations that have different target audiences or different constituencies. It's just that I'm being very clear about my stance and how we approach marketing, if that makes sense. And
Mhm.
then in terms of the challenges, yeah, all the challenges of starting any new business, which is like people, finding the right partners to work with, get developing great relationships with those partners so that you can deliver with, for your clients consistently on a regular basis, training people and finding the time to train people when you're also trying to launch, and you also need to, be mindful of client work. So just like that juggling of like being a people manager and also still a contributor, right? Like I'm still an individual contributor, and I'm not just leading in the organization. I'm also still working in the organization. So balancing that has been a nice challenge to have, but nonetheless a challenge.
And kind of thinking about what you've been able to accomplish, startup founder, run a startup, sunset one, and then start something new. What do you think you tell 18-year-old Shauna?
Ooh. Um, I guess I would tell her that like there's no like specific destination in mind, to just keep going and keep following the threads, but like don't think that like, I think when I was probably that age, I probably thought, oh yeah, here's a specific thing that I want to do, right? Like this is gonna be my career and that's it, right? And I think I would have just said, get ready for the journey. Like, get ready to have some challenges, get ready to have some wins, get ready to have some losses, but just be open to the journey.
I think that's a really important thing for folks to understand, that the journey is actually the best part of all of this. And it is not a straight line. It's not even a curvy line. It
No.
is like it's a maze.
Yeah, especially when you're committed to entrepreneurship, as you are a fellow entrepreneur. So yeah, when you are an independent spirit, or a freelance or an entrepreneur, or just independent in that way, You just have to have the ability to move and to go with the flow and to recognize opportunities and also recognize when to say no and when to close up shop as well.
Yeah, and I think that's and that was you're getting the next question. Like, obviously you put your heart and soul into Genie to make it run. And what was it like to have to say, like, you know what, it's time for me to sunset this?
Oh, it was really challenging, honestly. I think that the Genie brand followed me for a long time. So before it was Genie, it was like Genie Box, and there was like several different iterations of like the Genie brand, right? And I'd been working on that essentially, I think, since about 2015, 2016, all the way through about like 2022, 2023 is when I finally kind of was like, okay, we're going to put down this brand. And also, it's just such a lovely name. I feel
It's a
like I
great
really,
name.
yeah, I feel like there's so many things about the brand and the genius of the brand that I was like, oh, I really don't want to put this down. But I'm glad that I did because, a friend of mine told me at the time, and I thought this was such great feedback. He said, like, I think that you pretty much too identified with your business and with entrepreneurship. Like, what are you doing or who are you and what are your needs outside of this part of your life? Right. And so, yeah, I think I had become very identified to that brand and to that work. And when I put that down, it really enabled me to think about how I wanted to show up in work, generally speaking, differently. And like, what are some of the other things that I wanted to do? So, beyond, Little Big World, I'm also coaching and I'm also writing. I have my own Substack. And so I have like these other commitments around living this creative life, but I didn't give myself permission to do when as a startup founder.
And that's the thing that's really important is that, like, you find that moment and you make the decision, and you don't look at it as, oh, I really fucked up, but like it was part of the journey, and I learned
Exactly.
so much.
Or that maybe you did mess up, right? And that's also okay,
That's also
right? Like I think like we it's okay to fail. Like that's a great idea. Like go ahead and have some failures and then get up. See yourself get up after that failure. See how resilient you are, like show yourself what you're made of. I think that that's a great idea for folks to do.
exactly. It's like that scene in Black Panther where Queen Miranda goes to Shikala, show them who you are, and
Mm,
get back up. And I think that's, I think I'm on my second entrepreneurial journey now, having like had DF, went to corporate, and now I'm back out in the world of entrepreneurship. Do I wish I had done a bunch of things differently? Oh, fuck yeah. But it's okay to fail. It is 100%. I wish people said that more often, but also said it on the nuance of understanding that what failure oftentimes is so much harder for a Black woman.
mm. Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely, because we feel like the eyes that scrutinize us is always a there's always a heavier scrutiny on us, and there's always like the okay, will you get that opportunity again, right?
right.
There's always that question. So I get it, and I say, you know, do do all the work that you need to do and have all the feelings that you need to have around that. And also, it is your human right to have human experiences, And so I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of like my thought around it.
No, I think you're right because there like we're not supposed because we're strong Black women, we're supposed to like, okay, never let anyone see us be upset or disappointed. But also, if we fail, like the way every Black woman is gonna feel it when we fail, and it's like for no other group. Like you have these white startup boys who are like fail fast, and then we'll just give you another $1 million or $10 million.
Exactly.
And you're like, wait, what? And
Right.
which is completely ass backward and stupid. Because the thing is that when a Black woman fails, she figures out what went wrong, and then takes those learnings and puts it into the next thing that she does and kills it even more. When a white boy fails, very often it's the same shit over and over again because you know what? Ultimately, they did suck, and no one's and the folks don't say it. It's like you should have learned something from that previous failure. You should have learned, okay, I know when to pull the plug. I know when to like maybe ask for help versus, well, I don't care if somebody else's money, so I'm just gonna blow it. Like that is not in the makeup of a Black woman. And I think it's part of the reason why when people are looking at who you should be working with, who you should be hiring, and it's Black women. Because we
Right.
understand it. We understand the world in a way that nobody else does. And it's why we are the most educated and most entrepreneurial group in this country.
Yes. Yes. I love that you're such a advocate for us, and I thank you for this platform, Laura. It's really great.
Oh, I thank you, friend. So, okay, we're talking about business and failure and all that good shit. But what does Chana do for Chana? What do you do for your self-care, my friend?
Ooh, so I have a lot of things actually. So speaking of that Substack, I have a whole post on there around crying. I'm a big believer in crying. I cry as much as I can and just create space like for that catharsis and get let my heart break, let the frustrations out. I don't like carrying around negative energy, so I'll just give myself like a dedicated space around catharsis. So that's one piece. I also like meditating. A big believer in just breathing. So I do a lot of breath work, especially as someone who can be challenged around anxiety. I find that just like sitting and just breathing it out is just super helpful. And finally, and most recently, I'm now committing myself to an exercise practice. So I just hired a personal trainer and hopefully I will learn to enjoy the gym. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. I similarly am back on the health track journey, and it is not an easy one. I was like, I used to like working out and sports, and now I hate it so much.
Yeah.
We find our way. We do find our way.
Right. Exactly.
I want to look fly, so it's all good. It's for purely vain reasons. Is the only reason I'm doing it. Just purely vain. And then, do you have a give and or an ask of the audience?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I guess the give the audience, I don't have the, well, I'll make sure the link is ready by the time here this goes live. I used to do open office hours on Fridays. I think I'm going to relaunch my open office hours in March. And that just means that it's like free one-on-one sessions, like 30 minutes. If there's like anyone who wants to troubleshoot anything around marketing, entrepreneurship, for the spiritual, astrologically inclined girlies, like how to combine that with the work that you do, like anything really. We just want a second opinion or a second set of eyes around your creative work. So that's how you could use those office hours. And I'll make sure that I have a link to share with your audience for my give. And then my ask, I guess, would just be to follow my Substack, which is just circled and cubed dot Substack. So I'll also just share that as well.
Awesome. I love that. And kudos to you for opening up for office hours. I would never. What more power to you? Listen, I one day maybe in the far distant future I could become a coach. Not my ministry right now, but I fully love when folks do the work. And so I tip my hat to you, my friend.
Thank you.
And then last question, what's one thing that brings you joy?
Ooh, I mean, there's so many things that bring me joy. Let's see. Ooh, I guess like if I had to name just one thing, it would be spending quality time in conversation with like a cherished set of friends, like some folks that I really value their thinking and their approach to life and just like I had one of these like yummy moments this past Saturday at a friend's house. And yeah, I love being in community. I love being super intimate and, really getting into the nitty-gritty around someone's life and around my own life. And yeah, I think that brings me a lot of joy.
I love that. Wonderful. The quiet moments of those deeper conversations always
Hmm.
bring out
Yeah.
so much goodness. So totally agree with you on that. Well, home friend, you have just been a delight. I think you are the first two-time guest on the podcast, 300 plus episodes.
Woo!
So I tip my hat for you coming back.
I love that.
And sharing what you've been up to the last few years and the important and necessary work that you're doing. We're gonna put the details in the show notes for folks to connect with you, to take you up on your offer for those one-on-one sessions, and hire you for the work that you're doing for amazing storytelling and marketing, and just listening to good people. And it's just awesome to see good people winning. So I'm so glad to have you back on 29 Days of Magic. Thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Laura.
Awesome. And that is our show.